Hi, I'm Jack. Welcome to this episode of Chill Game Learn with the Red Path. I'm here with Dara and Jamie.
What's up?
What's going on?
Today we're going to be talking about gatekeeping, also dickheads on the internet. Basically off the back of some stuff that came out of Coventry. So Stu Black, one of the lead rules designers for Games Workshop, went to the Coventry 2-day event and went 0-5, and it has been met with some quite unpleasant comments on the internet, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
Which led us to want to discuss dickheads on the internet. So Stu went 0-5. He ran his custom chapter, the Iron Hawks Ultramarine Successors, with bolter fusillades as one of the traits. He had 18 bolter inceptors. It's fair to say he wasn't intending or aiming to win the event, I think.
Yeah.
So we wanted to talk about sort of how people first of all, how people are dealt with on the internet around tournament results, how people go to events, what goals they have, what comparisons they should be making, and dipping into our own sort of anecdotal experience, I think, because we've all had results that have not gone our way. Some more than others recently. So I mean, did you guys both see some of the stuff we wanted to touch on the comments?
Yeah, there was an entire Reddit discussion, which there was some positivity in there, and there was some focus on real issues, but there was also a lot of negativity and specifically shitting on Stu Black. I just want to bring this up. Actually, should have mentioned this earlier. We are not GW sellouts. We try and just give our opinions based on how we feel. Sometimes we talk shit about GW as a company, but sometimes shit like this happens, and like a lot of the Reddit responses, and there's been quite a few kind of like high profile content creators, right, have not necessarily made disparaging remarks, but have kind of highlighted it, have made an aside comment, just bringing it back into the forefront of a dude who went to a tournament and went 0-5.
My thing about that is like it's really weird because I think it was also on like that top Reddit comment as well, where it's like people lead with a line like "not to poke fun, but," and it's like that doesn't leading with that tagline doesn't make it okay to say whatever you want to say next. Like being like, "Oh, not to poke fun, but isn't it hilarious that this guy went 0-5?" It's like you are poking fun. Like there's no two ways around that.
But in a sentence means nothing.
Like it's really weird to me that like that's no saving grace for you to just be able to say what you want about someone. And it's like you said, like continuously bring it to the forefront, which I guess in some ways we kind of are now, but like not to like obviously we're not chilling out for GW or anything like that, but like it wouldn't really matter who this is, regardless of if they were at GW, if they're a content creator, if they were just some random person, playing their games. Like it's not really okay to say these kind of things. I think it's fair to say, right?
Yeah,
I'd agree. Yeah. I think like because these things wouldn't be being said about anyone else, and I get like maybe there's the expectation that he like can play, is a good player or whatever because he designs the rules, but like he you have to look at the list he took and like think about maybe what he went into the weekend looking to get out of it, because it's entirely plausible that he wanted to take his nicely painted custom chapter that he spent a lot of time developing, the army, the fluff, everything, to and play 5 games, because a tournament is the easiest way to get 5 games in a weekend. That's primarily why I started going to tournaments. That's why I've carried on going to tournaments. That's why I'm like going to so many tournaments, is because my local group does once a week, and I've only found them recently. That's 1 game a week, and I like to play Warhammer a lot. So a weekend gets me 5 games.
And it's fun because you play multiple different people, lots of different armies. It's the social aspect as well, right? You get to see people, especially for someone, as high profile as he might be, being able to go around and talk to people. and just have a lot of interesting interactions, right? And it is totally possible. Like, I know you and me looked at his list before the event, and I'm pretty sure both of us are like, oh yeah, so he's like bringing a fun army, you know, like the amount of like interceptors with bolter like guns or whatever they are. It's very clear that he was going in not intending to win, because it's like, you know, you can read a lot from someone's list with what they intend to get out of the event. Like, first of all, realistically, anyone who matches one of us and sees that we're playing world leaders, they know straight away that realistically we're not looking to win the event, because we're not bringing, you know, one of the top tier armies in the game that can compete at the highest possible level. Obviously, incredibly skilled players can't play at that level, but the vast majority of people, if you're bringing world leaders, safe to say you're going for a good time, right? You're kind of like that middling 3-2 sort of vibe is probably what you're aiming for. So you can read a lot from someone's list like that, like the vibe that they want to get from the tournament. And it's pretty clear that he was just probably going to have fun and meet some people, talk about games or whatever, and have a fun time. But like, my big thing is like the fact that people focused in so hard to just kind of like laugh and be like, haha, he should be really good at this game and he's going 0-5. It's like, yeah, I mean, you don't know what would have happened if he brought, we'll say, light Harlequins or like Leviathan Nids or something like that, right?
Yeah.
You don't know all these things. And like, no one was laughing at us when we were running World Leaders with our 8th edition book when all the 9th edition books are out, you know? And no one was laughing at the vast majority of players that go 0-5 at a tournament anyway. And those people aren't being called out on forums either. And I'm pretty sure those people still probably feel pretty shit because they went 0-5 at a tournament. So I think when you consider how much worse they're going to feel when they see that they're like the top comments from Meta Monday on Reddit, and it's like people laughing about their results, that's not going to feel good, you know?
I want to bring up something here, okay? Just based on that. He went 0-5. He played all 5 games. He didn't drop. You know, think about more, not us necessarily, but high-profile players, right? We're generally talking quite high-profile competitive players. If they go to a large five-game event or a 6-game or an 8-game or whatever and lose round 1, they will typically drop. Or, you know, maybe they will try going, you know, into the 2nd game, but if they don't score well enough or if they don't win again, often they'll drop. They'll just give up on it, right? Which, okay, I don't want to shit on people that drop, because I've had to drop from events for personal reasons, but I've never dropped because I was doing badly. But that's your prerogative. You paid for the event. That's your choice. But the man went 0-5. Like, he gave 5 people a game of Warhammer. Like, he gave 5 people a win. Like, you know, not intentionally, I'm sure, but he
also stayed for the whole award ceremony, which most people don't do.
Yeah. Like, he represented, he, in my opinion, he did a positive representation of Games Workshop. Where he was more than likely, he must have been there off his own back. Like, maybe there was some kind of fact-finding mission involved, but it was his weekend. He went to play Warhammer, like you said, and he played 5 games. He lost 5 games and still stuck around for the awards, because I'm sure he knew that some people would want to come and say hi, maybe some photo opportunities. Hopefully no one was rude to him at the event, but who knows? But the fact is, people are shitting on him online, and it's not cool.
Yeah, I think, like, from what I saw, like, I wasn't like stalking him or anything, but from what I saw at the event, like, he was enjoying himself. Like, he was looking around as I was saying to Dara, or Dara was saying to me earlier, he was walking around the event, like, complimenting people on their armies. Dara got a compliment from him at the Best Painted awards.
Let's not talk about that. That was the most embarrassing thing.
Let's definitely talk about that.
Dara through the rest of that interaction, I think, because I went back to move my army and left Dara, I thought, to have a conversation where there was some self-promotion or something with Stu Black, and came back and Dara was word vomiting everywhere. So,
yep.
You want to give us some insight there, Dara?
Yeah, I mean, because like I was setting up my army and I was kind of like talking to Jack while doing it about the game or whatever, and someone had come up behind me and was just like, "Oh, nice army" or whatever, and I was like, you know, kind of standard, like, "Thank you very much," blah blah, not really looking, And I can't remember. He said something else anyway. And I looked around and realized who it was. And I was just like, and just like, I think we were after a couple of those little fish beers as well, or it was around the era of the little fish beers, which were quite strong.
Nah,
I was not fully with my senses, we'll say. Uh, and yeah, I basically was just like, cool, I bottled it and I kind of swiftly fled. But to be fair, I went like later on, like, you know, maybe 10 or 15 minutes later, I went to put my army case and stuff under the table. And he actually came back with two of his friends to talk about the army and stuff. And we had a nice little chat. And he was a really nice person to talk to, but that's not really kind of the point of what we're talking about here. You know, it's kind of like, it's more like,
yeah, but he made the effort. He made
yeah,
an
exactly,
effort to come and talk to someone he doesn't know.
And at that point, he would have been 0-4 as well, because it was before the last game was when you put your army up for display. And like, you know, if I was 0-4, I don't really know if I would have the mental capacity to go around and engage people and talk about their armies and stuff. I think I'd be pretty down in the dumps. So, and I did not get that vibe at all.
I guess the point I was trying to make was more that he was enjoying the event as a complete package, right? Rather as going back to as like an opportunity to socialize, meet members of the community that he's obviously heavily involved with, and yeah, like just enjoy it for what it is, which is seeing some cool armies, playing some cool armies, playing 5 different armies to perhaps he normally plays, playing 5 different people than he normally plays, like it just a varied experience, isn't it? Yeah, and so like I guess what we're coming to together is don't be dickheads on the internet. Like people already beat themselves up about how they perform at events, most likely. Well, speaking from personal experience, I beat myself up about how I do at events personally. People who are more experienced may not, because they may have like looked to get different things out of the game, but some people beat themselves up about how they do at events, and to then potentially go on the internet and see people taking the piss because you've done poorly will only reinforce that and only make you feel worse. So, and there's just no need for it, is there? Like, what do you gain from shitting on someone else? You don't. You gain like internet points, right? And that's it.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think the main thing is there's just no place for it. You know, it is that kind of gatekeeping element, because it doesn't really matter who you're saying it to. Whoever you're saying it to will be a lot less inclined to go back and attend another event if that's the reception that they receive. It's just a real shit thing to do, to keep bringing it up, to keep making a point of it. It doesn't need to be a point. Like, if I was in his position, all I'm wanting from an event like that is to go and just be treated like a normal person who enjoys war games for a weekend and hopefully have nothing come out of it at the end of it. And unfortunately, that's not really exactly what happens. And that sucks. You know, I just wish that people didn't feel a need to rag on other people so bad. And yeah, like it will continue to widen the gap between the community and the people who write the rules. It will continue to make them feel disengaged, disconnected, unwilling to engage with the community on an actual, we'll say, like, social level. You know, you see it in certain not necessarily just tabletop games, but computer games as well, where you will have devs speaking with community on different forums and things like that. But you know, if that's the reception that they're going to get on these kind of things, why would they? Why would they speak with us? Why would they listen to our feedback? So it's kind of reinforcing this negative relationship. Obviously not saying that like GW are saints or anything, because they're not. Like, they fuck the rules up all the time, and like they have a lot to answer for the competitive scene. But like, there is an onus, there's a responsibility in the community as well to just not take these kind of actions, to not berate someone so badly for how they do it in events. Because I mean, you know, we're making all these anecdotes and stuff, but if I went to 0-5 in events, and I saw so many people, you know, upvoting a post talking about how I'd gone 0-5 and how that was funny, I don't think I'd go to a tournament ever again. I think that would just bury me, to be honest. I would be done. And it doesn't matter what my job is, or if I'm a content creator or whatever. I would just be done.
Have you like I know you have. You've had like sort of bad feelings after a tournament where you haven't done as well as you'd hoped, right?
Yeah, of course.
So how have you like talk us through how after that event, maybe on the train ride home or the plane home or whatever, like what's going through your head? Like how are you feeling? Because we all know, but maybe there's people watching that haven't been to a tournament yet, or somehow always go, 4-1 or something. But what is the emotions you're actually kind of going through on that post-tournament, few hours, couple of days, whatever?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like, this is, I suppose, the second, we'll say, segment of this Chill Game Learn is a more general approach to how you feel about a tournament, the goals that you set for yourself, and we'll say sort of dealing with the aspects of the tournament come down, the post-tournament blues that everyone kind of likes to call it, because obviously there's so much energy that you have to put into a weekend of Warhammer, be it 5 games or 8 games or even an RTT. You're committing a lot of time and a lot of energy to just playing this game. And at the end of all that, you're going to be pretty tired. Mm-hmm. And with being pretty tired comes like kind of self-doubt, contradictory feelings about how you did, depending on where you placed, how you could have done better, just continuously questioning everything about yourself, your list, all that kind of stuff. So, like, when you do good, there is that kind of like cushion of like, well, I did well, so it's fine. You can kind of be like, all right, I still have all these questions, but at the end of the day, this was my result. So I'm confident in my own ability. I've represented myself well. But if you don't do well, those questions are like magnified. You don't have that cushion. You just hit the ground so hard. And you question everything from your own skill to your list design. Generally, it's never like, like Warhammer players tend to like blame themselves real hard when it comes to like game losses. Especially in the competitive scene, it's always like, I could have done better, or like my list is bad and stuff like that. Good players do, yeah. Like bad players will be like, it was literally just the dice and like nothing else. And it's like, you played like, what about like the last 30 games? It's like all the last 30 games have been just dice, And it's like, I would say fair enough if you have like consistently rolled a 1 on your illusory supplication prayer. That is so fair, because that is the dice, and like fuck that prayer so much. Yeah. But like, there is like the decision making aspect as well. But that's a separate thing, right? So bouncing back from those post tournament blues can be incredibly difficult, and I suppose you have to try and understand that, like, first of all, you should never go off a goal that someone else has set for you going into a tournament. Like, you should never like look at someone else and say, well, they have done this, so then I must do the same or better. You should always go off your own goals. So a good example is like, every time I'm going to a tournament, I will generally say, what is the result that I want to get? What is the outcome? So Coventry, we've just been to, I said I want to get 4 wins, and I'll go 4-4. That will be perfect, no problem. And as long as I achieve that, that's fine. I'll be happy with that result. Anything else is great. And typically when I go to a GT, I will say I want to get a 3-2, because that's like a pretty common sentiment. I think most people want to get 3-2 at a five game GT, right? So setting those goals for yourself and knowing where you are in the game, knowing kind of like your rough skill level relative to everyone else, knowing where your army kind of is, your composition, all those kind of things. You can set yourself a more realistic goal, which means you'll probably be happier with your eventual outcome from the tournament, meaning that the kind of post-tournament blues won't hit you so bad. It is also important to kind of just, when you're reflecting on these things, that like, yeah, there probably is things that you can do better. There are probably things that you can improve on, but like, that doesn't take away from the fact that like you have achieved something by playing the amount of games that you have, by getting the results that you have. It's like when I went to, we'll say, Leeds, I went 2-3, and I was quite disappointed with that result, but I still got 2 awesome wins. And once I kind of got out of that like huge state of like being really kind of down on myself, I was like, well, all my losses were like less than 10 points away from each other as well, and that's pretty good too. you know, because it's like I gave all my opponents quite a close game, and my wins were quite good, and the people that I lost to were very good players. So it's kind of like you start picking on these things that you're like, well, maybe it's not so bad. And that's kind of what helps me overcome the post-tournament blues, like the come down from all that sort of stuff, is like, first of all, setting a reasonable and realistic goal for myself of what I want to get out of a tournament. And then in the dissection phase, not necessarily looking for the negatives in how everything went, but trying to pull the positives out of a bad result and say, well, what did I do right? Because like the negatives can be great in the long term for improvement, but in the immediate post-tournament come down, you need to look for the positives and say, well, I should be proud of myself for doing these certain things or taking my opponent this close to the wire. Well, I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I agree with pretty much everything you just said. I think you guys have probably seen it more than other people, but my post-tournament blues can be quite severe at times, especially for context, the last 3 tournaments I've been to were Coventry, where I went 3 and 5. I went to a GT the week before Coventry, where I went 2 and 3, and I went to an RTT a month before that ish, where I went 1 and 2. And that's all since London. That's my 3 events since London, where I did all right. I went 3 and 2, I think, and it was like a weaker 3 and 2, but yeah. And so those 3 events have been the post tournament blues for each of those 3 have been quite deep, I would say, and lasted a couple of days. And I think me personally, because I drive to all of my tournaments, I have a weird thing about transport, and so driving for me is just how I like to get to them. And so driving home for me is like the point at which I am like dissecting losses, going through like scenarios where like what decisions I could have made differently that would affect the outcome. And for me, the thing that has been tilting me recently, although I want to stress, like, not at the table. I don't tend to get like angry or whatever at the table. It's just I go a bit quiet sometimes. But it's like it's kind of like thoughtful quiet, because I'm like, how can I get back from this kind of thing? But yeah, Dara made the allusion to the illusory supplication rolls. At my 2 and 3 5-round tournament, I rolled, I think, 20 times for illusory supplication across the weekend, and I rolled 1 12 times of those, which is obviously not mathematically likely. I don't want to know the percentage. No thanks. And like so certain games have, like, I've been trying to I've tried to dissect them, and it's always come back to, but I just need to roll average. Because like in a couple of my games, and I know we were talking about like worst players, which, I mean, maybe I am, just blame the dice for everything. But sometimes I feel like dice can have quite a big effect on the game.
Yeah.
So like failing illusory supplication early, failing illusory supplication in my Ravenwing game, the second turn of Tactical Doctrine.
I was about to say, the Ravenwing game, when you failed that prayer, and man, that was devastating.
So he'd just finished my Vindicators and had nothing else to shoot with all of his damage through plasma except my Terminators, who then failed illusory supplication. And that game itself, like, the reason the Vindicators were gone by turn 3 was because I didn't roll a single save on any of them. Like 4-up saves, just didn't roll a single one. So like dice can have a big impact on the game, and sometimes rolling poorly at the wrong moment when your opponent also rolls high can just kill a game and mean that there's no decisions you could have made differently, barring just roll better. And that kind of game does tilt me a lot, because I like to view losses as learning experiences, or learning opportunities rather, and that's why I dissect them. Right? Is look at what decisions I could have made differently, and like, okay, I'm not going to make that mistake again. It was something that helped me improve very earlier on in my career.
Yeah.
in terms of like knowing what certain units do, like, okay, I'm not going to fall back from that because that just gives them the opportunity to close the gap next turn anyway. And so if I stay in combat, at least I get to hit them. I don't know, like that kind of thing. And like, yeah, so like, I could go into like some of the more technical stuff, but this isn't really the forum for it. It's hard because I as I say, I do like to dissect games, particularly the losses, to look at like how poor decision making affects the game, how I can make those decisions better in future. The tilt for me comes when I can't identify those, or when my opponent says things like, "I don't think you could have played that any differently."
Man, I knew you were going to say it. We talked about how much we hate that line of commentary. It is so bad.
Four of my 5 defeats at Coventry, my opponent said that to me, and I was like, "That's not very helpful." The fifth one, I kind of knew that I'd like messed up before the end of the game, and we had quite a nice chat afterwards, actually, about like, yeah, you should have just come out with everything early, and I wouldn't be able to deal with it. It was my Deathwing game that was quite close. The other thing that's been getting me more down recently is that until my second game of my RTT. So yeah, I don't know how many games into the season it was. My second game of the RTT, I hadn't scored under about 60 with the new codex, which it was pretty good because I tend to like measuring myself on battle points rather than the result. Because I think scoring well, if you continually improve your like scoring, then the results will come. So like measuring myself on like average battle points at a tournament per game is probably something that I'm more interested in than results. And recently, I've been scoring incredibly poorly, which is compounding, or because at least if I'm scoring poorly but still winning, which is unlikely, but it does happen, then I'm still winning, and it sort of brings it up. But if I'm losing and also scoring poorly, for me that's a killer. Because it's like because then my like decision making is poor on a more like systemic level, because I'm like not picking the right secondaries, or just not playing the game in the right way, not playing in certain armies right. And so like dwelling on, I think that's in one sense, I guess, driving home on my own, probably not the best way to deal with post tournament blues, because it leaves me on my own to just dwell and like internalize results and decisions and stuff. And by the time I get home, it's all like I'm just in a terrible mood if I've not done very well. I think on the flip side of that, when I have done well, I've been like giddy on the way home. Like I've obviously had a couple of 4-on-1s, all down to luck, but I've had a couple of 4-on-1s, and like and like so Sammy my wife was actually with me on the way back from Factorum last October when I went 4-on-1 with the Vindicators Lord of Skulls list, and she was a little bit freaked out by how like cheerful I was. And yeah, like I feel like there's no in between for me. It's either I have achieved what I wanted to do, which like I target battle points, and battle points are generally how I'm like, when I'm being a bit more objective, that's how I measure my like event success. But I do go into tournaments with like, I'd like to end up in this bracket. And recently I've not been doing that. Most of the time it's 3 and 2s. I was in the lead into London, I was looking to go try and start more consistently going to 4-on-1s, and obviously that has not happened, so I've had to readjust my aims. And then yeah, Coventry was an experience. It was fun, but it would be mainly because of all the company. But I mean we talked about this right at the end of the first day, because so for those who don't know, at Coventry there was a 3-day super major, and then on the Saturday and Sunday there was a 2-day GT that was running parallel. And the tournament organizer offered people who wanted to, at the end of day one, so the Friday, to drop out of the 3-day and enter the 2-day instead. So some of the like high profile players like went 0-2 or 1-1 or whatever, and wanted to do well, and so dropped out of the 3-day so that they could have a crack at winning the 2-day. Some like pretty big names actually. And then we had quite a long discussion about whether or not I was going to do that as well, because I'd gone 1 and 2, right? I think
Yeah,
on
it
bench.
was 1 and 2. Yeah.
And we had quite a long discussion about whether or not I was going to do that. And the way I ended up approaching it was because it was like you never know what you're going to get paired into. And like if I'd switched to the 2-day, it was a blank slate, and I didn't know I was going to get paired into anyway. So I could have just dropped with the intent of doing well and put myself under more pressure to do well, because it's like my last shot or whatever to do well, and then just got myself really stressed for 2 days. What I ended up deciding to do was not drop and take each game as it came. And like the 5 games I had after that were fun for the most part while I was in them. But
I certainly thought your vibe changed. Like after every game, you were like, "Look, each game as it comes." I was like, "Hell yeah, man! You know, keep that vibe going."
They were fun games. I was obviously quite disappointed to finish 3-5. Pre-London was off the back of Leeds. So I've got a decent 4-1 at Leeds. I think I finished like 24th of 200 odd. So I was riding pretty high. I then at London in the RTT won one of the Friday RTTs, so went 3-0 at that, and then ended up with 3-2 at London. And like, I think it's now that I'm looking back through the lens of 3 poor tournaments after that, that 3-2 feels like the beginning of the downward trend. But actually, I went 3-2 in my last game, finished 71-81, and I definitely could have won if I hadn't misplayed. So there's not that much separating that from a 4-1, which so I've made my peace with London at this point.
It's that objective lens, though, right? It's like you can look at it as like a 3-2, or you can look at it as like that was very close to being a 4-1. You know, at which point it's not hitting that downward trend that you're talking about.
Yeah. So I think even post London, I'm probably looking at this RTT where I'm like maybe looking at 2-1, like 2-1, maybe a 3-0, but it was quite a small tournament. It was quite competitive. Other factors, and then I'm looking at the GT and the Coventry Super Major, and I'm going like, okay, for that GT, I probably want to hit 3-2 because it's GW terrain. I've never played on GW terrain before. Like, yeah. And then Coventry, because I know UKTC terrain quite well, probably want to go at least 5-3, if not 6-2. But then, I mean, we were having the chat, like, was it the pub the night before, where I was like, I'll be happy with 4-4 now. Like, I've reined my expectations right in, and that's partially like adaptation to the meta. Like, people know how to deal with Chaos Terminators a bit more now and shit like that. But so I took a bit of a step back after my Maidstone GT, and I was just like, I need to stop putting as much pressure on myself. And then that still didn't quite work because I was in a bad place on Friday night, probably.
I think that is kind of the key bit there about the pressure on yourself. Because regardless of what you say, you're obviously a strong player. I mean, we're running a lower tier sub faction at the end of the day. But
I mean, you're still in like the top quartile of like general people who play 40k at the end of the day. So doesn't matter what you fucking say, Jack. Like, you're still in that like upper echelon.
There's a lot of, I mean, there's obviously a lot to unpack there and go through, which we won't touch on because this is stuff we've talked about, ourselves anyway. But like the key points is like the post-tournament blues or whatever. Like you've had the bad experience, the 1 and 2, the 0 and 3. Like a few months ago, I had a couple of tournaments where I went 0 and 3. They were just RTTs. But I was like, man, this is what the fuck. Like I'm not an 0 and 3 player, or I don't feel like I'm an 0 and 3 player. But you have that, and then
I think
I'm the same way.
Sorry, that's a really good point. What you just said there, like it's like you don't feel like you're this certain player.
Yeah,
and I feel like it's the same with Jack, right? And it's the same with myself. We don't feel like when you get a certain result, it's like I'm not that. Like I know I've done better, and I know I can do better, but I haven't gotten that. And it's about that. That is actually exactly on the nose. Is like when you get a result and you don't feel like it represents you as like a competitive player in the game. But sorry to cut across you. I just thought that was a really good.
We have our self expectations and our desires of what we want to achieve, And, you know, these will change depending on terrain, depending on the strength of competition, depending on our, you know, are we coming off the back of the flu or something? You know, all these things affect our expectations. But when you have that period of reflection, because I drive to all my events and I have normally at least an hour drive home. It's going to be late at night because my events normally finish at 9 or 10 o'clock at night. Drive home an hour in the dark. I have a did well playlist on Spotify. I have a did shit playlist on Spotify. And then every now and again, I have a radio or my Spotify is turned off and I drive home in silence. And it's like going through it was like, it's that bad. Like that's only happened a couple of times, but it does happen. And you will overanalyze. And the comments about the dice, like the illusory supplication, you know, we've talked about that as well. The statistical improbabilities of failing that. That happened to me, or something very similar. I failed 2 out of 3 attempts in one game, an RTT a couple of months ago, and then failed one, and then the apostle died in another. So I was like, you know, but like for me, after a few weeks of mulling over that, having some more practice games, for me, I came up with a strategy to counter that. I'm not saying this is like the solution to it, but I analyzed it. I thought about it. I was like, you know, how do I deal with this? So I came up with a way of dealing with it, which is hide terminators, save the CP, and auto pass it on the turn that they're going to come out and present themselves. So I know I've got it. It's a trade-off. It's not a solution in every game. But that, I think, is part of it. And on the one hand is why it's important, as you mentioned earlier, Dara, about like knowing the negatives and not dwelling on them, but you have to accept either the mistakes you had or being able to admit, oh, sorry, not admit, that's the wrong word, being able to tell the difference between bad luck, rolling 12 out of 21s, versus, oh, you know, I set up 5 12-inch charges and failed all of them. Well, yeah, you're going to fucking fail all those 12-inch charges. There is a fine line, but it's like, don't blame the dice is kind of like an easy way to reduce the whole argument. But it is
like if you have like 3 5-up shrugs or something, and you don't make any of them, like sure, it's statistically unlikely that like you should pass one. It's not like the worst luck in the world that you haven't, you know.
But yeah, if you're
there's not a god above being like, I'm gonna fuck you right now.
But like the 4-ups on the Vindicator, failing all of those, it's like, yep, it's the curse of Harlequins and Custodies when you're relying on.
I was literally going to say, it's like if you play Custodes or Quins and they turn on, and it's just like, well, fuck me, I guess.
But the thing is, you will remember, or you know, the human mind will remember the bad things a lot easier. They'll affect you more. And those, man, I failed 10 4-ups in a row, you will stick with, and you're more likely to not remember the times when you passed 10 4-ups. Your opponent will remember that moment. But regardless, I think it's important to have that post-tournament reflection. But you also, more importantly, need to be able to use that digestion, that introspection, and then start processing it and using it to come up with strategies, using it to, okay, so this part of my list didn't work. You know, let just as an example, played on GW terrain and Vindicators just aren't cutting it because huge bits of obscuring and only 24 inches. So you know what? Fuck Vindicators or whatever it is. You have that down curve where everything's shitty and blah, I hate myself, I hate 40k, etc. But then you start stepping back up and using that information to progress your game. Now the problem is when you have 2, 3, 4 tournaments like that, it's like, okay, so I learned from my mistakes, I tried to improve on my mistakes, and it didn't make a difference. That's where like the big tilt is going to come in. And that's where there isn't an answer to this. You know, we're not about to unleash this amazing secret to everyone watching about how to completely avoid tilt, but it is going to happen to you. At some point, if you're playing competitive, you're definitely going to have a shit tournament. You're going to have a tournament where you go 0-3, 0-5, or 1-4, or what have you, right? You are not going to meet your expectations every time. You're also going to have that happen 2, 3, 4 times in a row, maybe more. The point is, if you enjoy this game, as I know the three of us do, and you probably do if you're watching, you're going to have that. You're going to have to figure out a way where you can cope with that, whether that's, talking with, a couple of mates on a Discord channel or something, or giving up the game for a couple of weeks, or not giving up the game, but taking a break for a couple of weeks, or trying a different army for a month or a season or something like that. You have to figure out how you're going to deal with it. It might change and get better, it might not. There's no promise there. But I think in a means to kind of tie this together with the gatekeeping aspect, right? If when you were talking to us in Discord in our little chat bubble, Jack, if Dara and I had been, LOL, you went, 3-5, you suck, that would be absolutely shitty. Like,
that'd be devastating. That would be devastating. That would put you in the. Imagine if you went out for drinks with all of us on the Saturday night, and we were like, "Oh, isn't it hilarious that this is your current result, Jack?"
2-4, yeah.
Yeah, what the fuck? Who's gonna
That's just
say
not
that?
what you do. Number one, you certainly don't do it to a mate.
And you don't do it to someone that you don't know at all.
You don't do it to anyone. You just don't do it. You maybe you sit there and you're like, man, well, talk me through your games. You kind of have the conversation to allow the other person to process, bouncing ideas or what have you. But you don't say, man, you don't shit on someone, and you never shit on someone when they're down as well.
And you most of all, you don't do it if you've never been to a tournament and you've never been in that position. If you don't know what it's like to have the shitty post-tournament blues when you haven't lived up to your own expectations, you don't go and attack someone else.
Yeah.
Just come on, let's be better than that, please. We've shown so many times that we can be a really good and really welcoming community. So let's not just disgrace ourselves with this kind of behavior, because it's embarrassing, to be honest. It's just embarrassing.
Yeah, there's I think you mentioned a little while ago, Dara, about someone from GW, Stu, after his tournament, he made the effort, he stuck around, he was talking to people, being a friendly guy, etc., etc. But then, should he happen to jump on Reddit to read the Meta Monday article or whatever it was and see all that stuff, he's going to be very disincentivized to go again, and that's not good.
Yeah, and there's always complaints from the community about whenever new rules or new data slates or whatever are released, it's how out of touch with the community are they? How out of touch with the competitive community are they? And then it's but if they go to tournaments to talk to the competitive community, and I am a firm believer that that's all he went for, was to play 5 games and have chats with people who do know the game very well and who are invested in breaking the game. He went to talk to them for their perspective on things, which is a very valuable and intelligent thing to do when you're designing a game. Talk to people who are trying to break it. Surely. You go to an event and do that, and then you get shit on for it.
Yeah.
You're not going to go back and do it again, are you? You just, and then the community wonders why they don't go to tournaments more, because when they do, they get shit on.
Yeah,
it's like the meme of the guy who sticks the stick in his own bicycle.
Yeah.
It's oh no, why don't they listen to us? It's. I think you made a lot of great points there, both of you. From a personal perspective, the way I get over those shitty tournament blues is pulling on the positives from my games, even when they're bad situations, patting myself on the back, saying, "Hey, you did those things right. Good stuff. In a couple of days, you can think about the things you've done wrong. Don't think about them right now. But on a more meta scale, let's just try and be a little bit better as a community. Let's not call people out. It doesn't matter who they are. The people who are working at GW are still people. Yeah. So let's treat them that way and not just randomly cyberbully them for no reason. And in general, just don't call people out for their tournament results. Like, it's not cool. Everyone's just going to have a good time. Everyone is going with their own personal expectations and their own goals. Like, you've just seen a pretty open deep dive into the three of us, the reasons why we go to events, the things that we expect out of them, how we feel afterwards. So try and kind of visualize how we would feel if someone just like came at us and was like, "Hey, aren't you guys supposed to be like the best world leader players? How come you're like going 0-5 in an event?" You know? Think about how we'd feel about that. Like, what the hell, you know?
Yeah.
What the hell?
Basically, don't be a dickhead. Don't be a dickhead on the internet. Just treat people with some respect, regardless of who they work for, what their intent at an event is. You know, let's just be cool about this stuff. There are correct and better ways to communicate with GW about stuff you're not happy with in the meta. You can make FAQ suggestions. There are, as long as you're civil and polite and, you know, genuine in the way you do these things. And then when you see someone, a GW head of rules or head of you know, the codexes and everything, at an event, have a polite conversation. Oh, you're right, mate, how's it going? Oh, bad luck, you know, on your last game, but your army looks amazing, blah, blah, blah. By the way, here's my thoughts. He might actually listen to you. I'm not going to say, you know, but now he might not come back to an event. You know, we don't know, because people are treating GW employees kind of shitty. And it's GW, the company, that, you know, we tend to have issues with. Sometimes they're great, but sometimes they're not. But the employees, the people that work there, are just people doing a job for a company and a franchise that they love, trying to do the best they can. And by making outreaches like this, by going to events to talk to people, they're putting themselves out there. And we as a community are reacting poorly, whether that's outright insulting them in a Reddit post, whether you're upvoting that insult, or whether you're a content creator that is kind of making a bit of a mean joke about it. It's just not cool.
I would say that, like, maybe a lot of people kind of view it as more of a harmless activity, or like don't see it as necessarily as malicious as it is. But I would hope that by watching this video and listening to how we feel coming off the back of maybe rougher tournament results and rougher things in general like that, and kind of where our mental is at, that it's not always in the best place when you've not lived up to your own expectations, that just because you mean it as a joke doesn't necessarily mean that it's taken as a joke as well.
Yeah.
And that it could actually have quite a big effect. So like, you know, upvoting a certain thing or like commenting on a certain thing, you might think that it is pretty harmless, but like maybe it's not, you know. And at the end of the day, all these people who work for them, at some point they were exactly the same as us. They were just like a fan of 40K that applied for a job and got it or whatever. And it's important to keep that in mind. Like, they are just people and they're trying to make the best of it as well. So let's just all try and make the vibe a little bit better and treat people as we would want to be treated ourselves, because no one wants to be laughed at for going 0-5 in an event, or not doing as well as maybe they were perceived that they should be doing. Like, no one wants that, you know, unless it's like they're good friends that they know they can take it from them. Because like, if you guys ragged on me for like doing shit in an event, I would be like, fuck you guys, but like that is pretty funny. Like, when we were in the like absolute depths of like 8th edition with our terrible codex, and like we were still going to events, the last thing we would want to hear is someone being like, you know, why the hell are you doing this? Like, what's the point of running world leaders? Like, that can bury someone. And it's not cool. So just keep that kind of stuff in mind before you leave a comment that you think might be harmless, because maybe it's not, you know. Yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think that about wraps it up, really. I think that's a good way to end it. Yeah, it's pretty simple, everyone. Be cool. Be chill with your way you communicate with other people. So with that,
actually, I have a good one.
Okay.
Be chill with how you communicate with other people. Go to a tournament and game, and then in the post reflection, you got to learn.
Nice.
We've been the Red Path. This is Dr. Beeman. This is Bachelor Jamie. And it's been me. Peace out.
I haven't stopped recording yet.
I don't
Just let
give a
you know.
fuck. That was so good. That was so good.
That was very good. But this is staying in. This is
I don't
this
care. I
isn't
don't care.
even gonna be a
That
post-credits.
was like peaked. I will never give a sign off stronger than that.
You
You can make that the
walk us
intro
out.
before the title rolls.
Twice in 2 videos now.
Yeah, I know. I'm on a roll tonight. I'm feeling it. You know.
Is it the second glass of whiskey? Is that's what's hitting you?
Oh man, if this was just the second, we'd be.
Wouldn't have been as strong as that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, Jack, do you want to walk us out?
How do you want me to sign off? I thought that was the sign
professionalism.
That was the sign off. That was the sign off. It was perfect.
All right. You know what? That will be the sign off, and this is just going to go after the credits.
Yeah.
I'll just do it.
This can be like something for, I don't know. We can charge like maybe OnlyFans content for this or something.
Yeah.
This is pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, like $20 a month, right?
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I'll create a brand new Patreon bracket just for this.
Just after dark.
Yeah. Whatever.
The red bloopers.
Yeah.
Oh, what a meme. Okay. All right, I am going to stop recording though.
Yes. Nice.
There.
Probably